San Quentin State Prison holds some of the most dangerous people in the world. Inside its walls, power and violence are a constant struggle, where some of the most feared gang members live on the edge every day. These individuals have shaped the prison's history through their actions, leaving a mark that is impossible to ignore. In this video, we're diving into the lives of the most dangerous gang members inside San Quentin. From high-profile escape attempts to violent conflicts, these stories reveal just how far they'll go to keep their control. Number 8. Jesse Gonzalez of the Mexican Mafia Gang. Jesse Gonzalez, known by the moniker Bird, is a prominent and validated member of the Mexican Mafia. Born and raised in La Puente, California, Gonzalez's life of crime escalated, ultimately culminating in his association with the Mexican Mafia, where he earned the street name Bird. His involvement with this organization was not only as a rank-and-file member, but as a shot caller, a position of influence within the gang's hierarchical structure. As a shot caller, Gonzalez played a key role in directing criminal activities both inside and outside the prison walls. His participation in various illegal operations, from extortion to trafficking illicit substances, was significant, as he was identified in various court documents as part of operations involving Mexican Mafia extortion rackets and profits derived from illicit substance distribution. One of the most well-known incidents involving Gonzalez occurred on May 29, 1979. On that day, during an illegal substance raid by Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies and officers from Baldwin Park and El Monte, Gonzalez fatally shot Deputy Jack Williams. The law enforcement officers were executing a search warrant at a residence in La Puente, tied to substance activities. Gonzalez, who had allegedly been forewarned about the impending raid, took up arms and was prepared for an altercation. When the deputies breached the door, Gonzalez opened fire with a shotgun, fatally wounding Deputy Williams and injuring another officer. Following this incident, Gonzalez was charged and convicted of first-degree manslaughter with the special circumstance of targeting a peace officer. Additionally, he was found guilty of felony assault on the surviving officer. The conviction led to a death sentence in 1981, though the sentencing was a prolonged process, with the first penalty phase jury deadlocked and eventually was sent to prison. Even while incarcerated, Gonzalez's reach extended beyond the prison walls. Evidence from multiple trials and investigations confirms that Gonzalez continued his involvement in criminal activities within the prison system. In particular, in a 2020 manslaughter trial, a handwritten note used as evidence revealed Gonzalez's name on a list of Mexican Mafia members receiving payments from extortion and illicit substance proceeds. His nickname, Bird, comes up frequently in conversations about gang finances and illicit substance distribution within Los Angeles County jails. As of today, Jesse Gonzalez remains incarcerated on death row at the confines of San Quentin State Prison. Number 7. Freddy Fuava of the Young Crowd Gang. Freddy Fuava, also known as Smokey, is a well-known member of the Young Crowd Gang. His life of crime was marked by multiple incidents that displayed a disregard for law enforcement, ultimately leading to his involvement in one of the most high-profile criminal cases. Fuava's criminal history caught up with him in 1995 when he became the prime suspect in the fatal incident involving Deputy Sheriff Stephen Blair. This tragic event unfolded when Blair and his partner, Deputy Robert Lyons, were conducting a gang enforcement patrol in Linwood, a neighborhood plagued by gang violence. Freddy Fuava, a member of the Young Crowd Gang, which had ties to the Mexican Mafia, was walking with another gang member when the deputies approached them. During this encounter, Fuava, who was carrying 2 firearms, feared being apprehended and facing life in prison under the 3 strikes law, which would have marked his 3rd serious offense. As tensions escalated, Fuava reportedly opened fire on the deputies. The shots fatally struck Deputy Blair, who managed to fire back before succumbing to his injuries. Fuava later admitted that he acted out of fear of imprisonment, driven by his desperation to avoid returning to prison. He was eventually arrested after a brief manhunt, but not before attempting to evade police capture. He was found guilty of the fatal act against Deputy Blair and was sentenced to death in 1997. His dangerousness was further underlined by witnesses from acquaintances who revealed his willingness to resort to violent measures to avoid prison, as well as his lack of remorse following the incident. Fuava remains on death row, and as he continues to stay at the confines of San Quentin State Prison till this very day. Number 6. Hector Ayala of the Mexican Mafia Gang. Hector Ayala is a notorious member of the Mexican Mafia who has long been associated with some of the most dangerous elements within the organization. Alongside his brother, Reynaldo Ayala, Hector was implicated in several serious criminal acts that earned him a feared reputation in and out of prison. Hector Ayala's criminal journey came to a peak when he and his brother Reynaldo were charged in connection with the brutal 1985 incident in southeast San Diego. The brothers were accused of being responsible for the demise of 3 individuals at an auto repair shop in what was described as an execution-style incident. The victims, who worked at the shop, were tied up, and their lives ended in a cold and calculated manner. This horrific event was tied to a demand for $10,000, which further fueled the violence that ensued. The trial of Hector and Reynaldo Ayala began in 1989, 4 years after the incident. Hector was convicted and ordered to be executed, a fate he shares with his brother Ronnie. Hector's position within the gang was not just one of a foot soldier, but someone who had influence over criminal operations both inside and outside prison walls. The organization used underlings and facilitators to maintain its grip on illegal activities, with Hector playing a role in overseeing these operations. Cell phones, smuggled into the prison, were one of the tools used by the Mexican Mafia to continue running their illicit enterprises, with substance-related dealings being a primary source of income. While in prison, Hector's influence extended beyond just criminal activities. His name became synonymous with the brutal control that the Mexican Mafia exerted over neighborhoods. The gang's members, under his indirect leadership, were tasked with carrying out extortion, substance-related offenses, and collecting money for those serving time, further extending the Mexican Mafia's power over the streets. In 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Hector's order for execution conviction, which was handed down for his involvement in the 1985 incident. The court's decision came after years of legal battles in which the defense raised objections over how the jury was selected during the trial. Specifically, concerns were raised about the exclusion of Black and Hispanic jurors, but the court ultimately ruled in favor of maintaining Hector's sentence. The Supreme Court's decision was closely contested, with a 5-4 split, but Hector's fate remained unchanged. And today he continues to stay in the confines of San Quentin, waiting for his sentence conviction. Number 5. Timothy Joseph McGee of the Toonerville Reefa 13 Gang. Timothy Joseph McGee is a notorious figure in the world of organized crime. He is a convicted serial manslaughterer and a high-ranking member of the Toonerville Reefa 13, TVR 13 Gang. McGee's involvement in the gang helped solidify its violent reputation. McGee, born on April 27, 1973, grew up in Atwater Village, a neighborhood in Los Angeles where he became deeply embedded in gang culture. His father, of Scottish descent, abandoned him and his mother at a young age, leaving McGee to embrace his Mexican-American heritage more fully. As a young man, he became involved with Toonerville Reefa 13, where he quickly rose through the ranks, gaining a reputation for ruthlessness and strategic brutality. By the late 1990s, McGee had become one of the most feared and dangerous members of the gang, often referred to by his nicknames Eskimo and Güero, the latter referencing his light complexion. His leadership in the gang was marked by violent power struggles with rival gangs and an unprecedented level of criminal activity. McGee was heavily involved in orchestrating and committing numerous shootings and homicides, which earned him a fearsome reputation not only in Atwater Village, but throughout the greater Los Angeles area. His crimes escalated to the point where he was implicated in a series of manslaughter cases and attacks that paralyzed communities with fear. Between 1997 and 2001, McGee is believed to have been responsible for at least 12 homicides, although the true number may be higher. One of McGee's first notable manslaughter crime occurred in 1997, when he was accused of the execution-style termination of Ronnie Martin, a member of a rival gang known as Frogtown. Martin was shot 28 times, and his demise was one of many violent events that were tied back to McGee as law enforcement pieced together his violent spree years later. McGee's pattern of violence often targeted rivals, but some of his victims were seemingly random or had crossed paths with him in the wrong way. In June 2000, McGee took the life of 16-year-old Ryan Gonzalez simply because they shared the same street name, Güero, a name McGee felt should belong solely to him. Additionally, in November 2001, McGee and an accomplice opened fire on rival gang member Duane Natividad and his girlfriend, Marjorie Mendoza. Mendoza, who was a bystander, was slaughtered in the attack. Another brutal case tied to McGee was the massacre of the Wysotsky family. After one member of the Wysotsky family reported McGee's substance-dealing operations to the police, McGee retaliated by ordering the termination of Cherry Wysotsky, her mother Mary Ann Wysotsky, and family friend Brian Robinson in August 2001. In addition to his manslaughter spree, McGee also directed several attacks on law enforcement, where in one occasion he coordinated an ambush on 2 LAPD officers, attempting to lure them into Toonerville territory, where his associates opened fire on the patrol car. Although the officers narrowly escaped without injury, McGee was later convicted of 2 counts of attempted manslaughter for his role in the ambush. McGee was eventually arrested in 2003 in Arizona, after a nationwide manhunt, and charged with multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, and other violent crimes. In 2009, McGee was convicted of 3 manslaughter and 4 attempted manslaughter, and was sentenced to death. The trial was marked by the chilling evidence presented, including McGee's writings where he described his violent exploits and expressed pride in his manslaughter enterprise. In addition to his death sentence, McGee had already been sentenced to 75 years to life for his role in leading a prison riot in 2005 while incarcerated at the Los Angeles County Men's Central Jail. The riot, which lasted several hours, involved inmates assaulting prison guards and setting fires under McGee's direction. Following his 2009 sentencing, McGee was placed on death row at San Quentin State Prison. Today, as at the time of this compilation, it's not clear if he is still at San Quentin State Prison or not, but he remains in prison till date for all his crimes. Number 4. Gunnar Lindberg of the White Aryan Resistance. Gunnar J. Lindberg, born on March 1, 1975, is a notorious figure who became well known due to his involvement in a brutal crime that left a lasting impact on his community and revealed his affiliation with a dangerous white supremacist ideology. Lindberg, a neo-Nazi and self-proclaimed leader within the White Aryan Resistance, became infamous for his racially motivated acts of violence, which culminated in his eventual conviction for a 1996 crime that shocked the nation. In January 1996, at the age of 21, Lindberg, along with a younger accomplice, Dominic Michael Christopher, attacked a young Vietnamese-American man named Tien Minh Lai at the tennis courts of Tustin High School in California. The attack was premeditated, fueled by Lindberg's extreme racial hatred. After confronting Lai, who was rollerblading at the time, the 2 men trapped him, then carried out a vicious physical assault. Lindberg's brutal actions were rooted in his deep-seated hatred for non-white individuals, a belief system reinforced by his ties to white supremacist groups like the White Aryan Resistance and similar extremist organizations. His criminal history was extensive, beginning in his teenage years when he exhibited violent tendencies. He was known to have previously committed assault and robbery, including an incident where he targeted a day laborer, physically injuring him while making racist remarks. He also participated in a home invasion, during which he assaulted an elderly woman. Additionally, he was involved in an incident where he attacked an 11-year-old minor using a BB gun, motivated by the fact that the boy's father was a law enforcement officer. Lindberg's crimes were tied to his growing involvement with white supremacist ideologies during his time in juvenile detention and later while incarcerated in state prison. He began aligning himself with extremist groups, spreading propaganda, and even boasted of his leadership role within the white supremacist movement while serving time. Following the attack on Thi Minh Le, authorities quickly closed in on Lindberg after receiving a tip from his cousin. Lindberg had sent a letter to his cousin, detailing the crime with chilling specificity, expressing pride in what he had done. This letter, which contained information only the perpetrator could have known, was a critical piece of evidence that led to his arrest. Upon searching Lindberg's residence, authorities found extensive evidence linking him to white supremacist movements, including literature from groups like the Ku Klux Klan, White Aryan Resistance, and other extremist organizations. During his trial, it became clear that the attack on Lai was not only motivated by Lindberg's intent to rob, but also by his deeply rooted hatred for people of different races. The prosecution presented evidence of Lindberg's involvement in the white supremacist movement, as well as his collection of racist propaganda and violent imagery. Witnesses, including his cousin, testified that Lindberg saw the violent act as part of a broader racial movement, showing no remorse for his actions. The jury, after considering the overwhelming evidence, found Lindberg guilty of the attack with the special circumstance of a hate crime. In 1997, Lindberg was convicted of first-degree homicide, and the court deemed the crime to be racially motivated. The conviction came with a recommendation for the most severe penalty available under California law, and in an unprecedented decision, the judge sentenced him to the ultimate consequence for his actions. His accomplice, Christopher, was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for his role in the crime. Despite his conviction and the heinous nature of his crimes, Lindberg continued to maintain his extremist beliefs while on death row. He sought to communicate with others outside of prison, even creating an online profile to connect with pen pals, presenting himself in a way that contradicted his violent past. His attempts to portray himself as a good guy who was honest and respectful stand in stark contrast to the cold and calculated actions that led to his imprisonment. Lindberg's case went through the appeal process, and in 2008, the California Supreme Court upheld his conviction and death sentence, affirming that the evidence clearly showed his actions were racially motivated and tied to his extremist beliefs. Today, Gunner J Lindberg remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison. Number 3. Bruce McGregor Davis of the Manson family. Bruce McGregor Davis, born on October 5, 1942 in Monroe, Louisiana, is a notorious figure who gained infamy as a central member of the Manson family. Often referred to as Manson's right-hand man, Davis played a significant role within the group, known for their violent and troubling activities in the late 1960s. Growing up in Mobile, Alabama, Davis had a somewhat conventional early life. He was the editor of his high school yearbook and attended the University of Tennessee for 3 years before dropping out due to poor academic performance. His life took a dramatic turn in 1962 when he hitchhiked to California and began to drift, engaging in a lifestyle that included frequent use of substances and transient living. Davis first encountered Charles Manson and other members of the group, such as Mary Bruner and Patricia Krenwinkel in Oregon in 1967. By this time, the Manson family had started forming around Manson's charismatic influence, and Davis, drawn in by the allure of the group's freewheeling lifestyle, quickly became a prominent figure at the Manson family. In July 1969, Davis was present when Manson assaulted a man named Gary Hinman, cutting his ear. Though Davis was not present when Hinman's life was terminated, this event is often cited as a precursor to the larger acts of violence that followed. Davis's presence in these key moments highlights his complicity in the family's dangerous actions. In late August 1969, Davis was directly involved in the assault on Donald "Shorty" Shea, a ranch hand at Spahn Ranch. Shea, who was considered a threat by Manson, was targeted by the family, and Davis took part in this brutal act. This event, along with the Hinman incident, became part of the charges that eventually led to Davis's arrest and conviction. Additionally, Davis was present when another family member, John Philip Haught, gave up the ghost in what was reported as a game of Russian roulette in November 1969. As the Manson family's activities came under increasing scrutiny from law enforcement, Davis went into hiding. However, on December 2, 1970, he voluntarily surrendered to authorities, facing charges for his involvement in the family's violent crimes. In 1972, Davis was convicted of first-degree offenses related to the manslaughter of Gary Hinman and Donald Shea, along with charges of conspiracy and robbery. By then, California had abolished the death penalty, so Davis was sentenced to life imprisonment. Davis has been eligible for parole multiple times, with the state parole board recommending his release in 2010, 2012, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2019, and 2021. However, each recommendation was overturned by the sitting governors of California, citing concerns over Davis's lack of empathy and the gravity of his past actions. As of 2023 till date, Bruce McGregor Davis remains incarcerated, serving his life sentence at San Quentin State Prison. Number 2. Pedro Espinoza of the 18th Street Gang. Pedro Espinoza, a notorious member of the 18th Street Gang, was deeply involved in gang activities throughout his life. Born around 1989, Espinoza was immersed in the gang culture from a young age. By the time he reached his teenage years, he had risen through the ranks of the 18th Street Gang. His gang affiliation played a significant role in the tragic events that unfolded in March 2008, when Espinoza committed the crime that would eventually lead to his downfall. On March 1, 2008, Espinoza had just been released from jail after serving time for firearm-related charges and an assault on a police officer. Only a day later, on March 2, 2008, Espinoza became responsible for a fatal attack that would ignite widespread controversy and public outrage. The victim, 17-year-old Jamiel Shaw II, was a promising high school football player with a bright future ahead of him. Shaw was walking home from the Beverly Center when Espinoza, accompanied by another gang member, confronted him on the street near Shaw's home. Espinoza, mistaking Shaw for a member of a rival gang due to the red Spider-Man backpack he was carrying, approached him. In that brief, chilling moment, Shaw's fate was sealed as Espinoza's violent behavior took over. The assault that followed was swift and brutal, leaving Shaw fatally wounded. Espinoza's actions were motivated by his desire to increase his standing within the 18th Street Gang. The tragic loss of Shaw, a talented athlete with scholarship offers from prestigious universities, struck a nerve in the community and highlighted the brutal reality of gang violence. The aftermath of Shaw's demise was not only devastating for his family, but also led to a heated debate over immigration policies. Espinoza, an illegal immigrant, had been released from jail a day before the crime without being handed over to immigration authorities, sparking widespread criticism of the city's handling of undocumented gang members. The controversy intensified when it was revealed that his release could have been avoided had the system prioritized his deportation. Following his arrest, Espinoza's trial revealed a dark and dangerous individual who showed no remorse for his actions. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Espinoza maintained a defiant attitude throughout the legal proceedings. He was formally charged with first-degree assassination, and on May 9, 2012, the jury convicted him. Due to the nature of the crime and the special circumstances surrounding it, the jury recommended the death penalty. On May 23, 2012, Espinoza was sentenced to death by Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Ronald Rose. Since his sentencing, Pedro Espinoza has been on death row, serving his time at San Quentin State Prison till this day. Number 1. Tquan Andre Cox of the Crips Gang. Tquan Andre Lil Fee Cox, born on December 1, 1965, stands as one of the most infamous figures associated with the Crips Gang, specifically the Rollin 60 Crips, a highly organized and feared faction. His life has been marked by a series of violent acts, and his notoriety stems primarily from a horrifying incident in 1984 that led to his incarceration on death row in prison till this day. In the early 1980s, Cox was already embedded in the world of gang life. His association with the Rollin 60s Crips placed him at the center of the gang's many criminal activities, which included clashes with rival factions. At just 18 years old, Cox's name became synonymous with a tragic and devastating event that shocked the nation. On August 31, 1984, in a case of mistaken identity, Cox and accomplices invaded the home of Deborah Alexander, the mother of former NFL star Kermit Alexander. Their mission, fueled by their gang-related activities, was to eliminate a family connected to a lawsuit stemming from a separate incident. However, the gang members had misread the address, and the result was the demise of 4 innocent people: Deborah Alexander, her daughter Deetra Alexander, and 2 young boys, Damon Bonner and Damani Garner Alexander. This incident, a miscalculated and deadly intrusion, instantly cast Cox as a symbol of the violent and unpredictable nature of gang life in Los Angeles. Cox, along with Darren Charles Williams, was identified as one of the gunmen, while Horace Edwin Burns, Lisa Brown, and Ida Moore served as lookouts and getaway drivers. All were arrested, and Cox, already on parole at the time for unrelated charges, quickly became the face of the crime. By 1986, Cox was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree assassination, and the jury's decision resulted in a death sentence, sending him to death row at San Quentin. Life inside San Quentin did little to diminish Cox's violent tendencies. In 1988, he was involved in a violent altercation with Stanley "Tookie" Williams, a co-founder of the Crips. Cox attacked Williams with a makeshift weapon in what appeared to be a power struggle within the prison's gang hierarchy. But Cox's criminal legacy did not end with violence against fellow inmates. On July 18, 2000, Cox was at the center of an audacious and nearly successful escape attempt from San Quentin. Along with 2 other inmates, Paul Tuilepa and Noel Jackson, Cox made a bold move towards freedom, exploiting a weakness in the prison security system. The trio managed to unravel a section of the chain-link fence and made a dash for a potential escape route. Their plan involved taking hostages, but quick intervention by prison guards thwarted the attempt, and all 3 inmates were subdued. Today, Cox remains on death row, still serving his sentence at San Quentin State Prison.